what I wanted to do today, obviously it's an hour, there's not enough time for me to teach you how to use all these tools, but my goal is to sort of talk to you about what tools are available to you and to try to give you the resources to reach out and get the training that you need. So once we've gone over the whole landscape, then I'll also provide you, I was frantically working on this resource, which is sort of a list of the tools and how to get to them and how to get help with them. So, I usually don't use slides, but I made a little slide deck here. So let me share my screen and talk to you a little bit. And I will also, I'll share this with you guys afterwards as well in the chat. So, so at Dartmouth, we have a lot of tools, and some of these tools are used more frequently for research. Some of them are used more frequently for teaching. I'm going to focus on the ones that are used more frequently for teaching, but understand that this is only a small list of the tools, not to mention the tools that people custom develop. Tuck and Thayer are famous for developing custom tools to use both for educational purposes and for research. So, and then the tools for specialized things like Cesar, I wish I knew all the music tools, but I don't, but there are people who do. And so part of what we do is if we don't know a tool, we'll help you try to identify people who can help you if you need some help with a custom tool or a discipline specific tool. So this slide just has a brief sort of glimpse at some of the educational or at the broad range of educational tools that we have, and the ones that I'm going to at least touch on briefly and try to give you a sense of what they do, how they might be used, for some of you, what I heard in your introductions when we were talking, I heard the word resist quite a lot. I am an educational technologist who has been in education for over 20 years, and I started out as a software production person, and yet I was an English major. I don't consider myself to be techie. I just know how to read and follow directions, and I try to find the tools that best support what I'm trying to do in any given situation. So I guess I might be one of the few educational technologists who always encourages judicious use of technology in your teaching, because it's not about the tech, it's about the teaching. And if a tech doesn't, if you're using tech to be flashy or to be so that you can make things more exciting, I never encourage that. It's got to make your teaching better, or it's not worth the effort to invest in learning and using the tool. So I'm just going to put my biases out there right on the table in that regard. And yet, I think tools like this can be super helpful. So if you can go into it with just a little bit of an open mind and a critical mind and say, okay, here's what I'm going to use, and here's why, and here's what I'm going to get out of it, that then you can determine what's the best tool for your class. At Dartmouth, Canvas is sort of the hub, I would say. That's the one that if you're going to invest in one, that's the one to invest in, I would say, because it's the hub for, particularly now during COVID. There were a lot of people who resisted Canvas quite a bit prior to our remote teaching, but Canvas really does provide a digital classroom. And it's the place where we organize the files, the assignments, announcements, all of those provide a central place for students to go to get the information they need for their classes. And the more consistent we can be about using that, the better it'll be for them, because what we know from our experiences in the spring and summer is that part of the big challenge of this time of COVID is students are all over the place. the schedules are off, the locations are off, they don't have the social interactions, they don't have the daily routine, and anything that we can do to be consistent and organized in Canvas is going to help with their learning and help with how your class goes. So Canvas really, if you got one, that's the one you want to learn. I'd say the second spoke of this hub is going to be Zoom. None of us had any idea that Zoom was going to be so incredibly important. Even 6 months ago, I used Zoom fairly regularly, but that was kind of unique. But now our lives are organized on Zoom, and seemingly in little squares. We're in little squares all over the place. And yet it has become sort of both our lifeline and our jailer. It's allowing us to do things that we never could have imagined doing remotely, and we're confined to these boxes for much of the day. So I would say recognize that about this tool, and even though we want to use it to have connections, it might be more comfortable to us to give lectures via Zoom because that's the way we've always taught. You might want to consider that students are spending so much time on Zoom that there's a Zoom fatigue. So think about how you use those live lectures, when you use them, and again, just be intentional. Kaltura is another major spoke in our wheel here, our wheelhouse. And Kaltura is a tool for lecture capture and media hosting. You'll access Kaltura through Canvas. We adopted Kaltura long ago as a way for the library to disseminate feature films and copyrighted films, that kind of thing, through Canvas in a way that didn't allow students to download them, and allowed for a good experience for students to stream them from their computers. During COVID, we pivoted to also using that for lecture capture. So you're capturing your screen, your video, and disseminating them through your course. And it has become a tool that we rely on quite a bit. We have quite a few media tools at Dartmouth, but at least for this fall, the way that most people are putting their lectures up is through Kaltura, or also through Zoom. A lot of people are just using Zoom to capture themselves doing their lectures, which is a perfectly fine way to use the tool. But I'm just gonna do this brief overview, and then we'll come back to some of those use cases in just a sec. G Suite and WordPress. The Google Suite, which I know David mentioned earlier, it can be challenging if it's a new paradigm for you, but it is a tool that students are used to, and it provides a lot of collaboration functionality. The G Suite instance at Dartmouth, we have an institutional license, which gives us unlimited storage. It allows you to be able to collaborate with students, and as long as you're using their Dartmouth email, you don't have to worry about, oh, what's their Gmail address, what's their account, and it gives you access to a full range of tools. Google Slides, which I'm using now to present, which can be shared and edited together for collaborative projects. You can store videos in Drive. If you have media there and you want to store that for later, videos, images, whatever. It is a very valuable tool, and can be used in classrooms for a multitude of uses. In addition, we have an institutional instance of WordPress, which is we call it Journeys, journeys.dartmouth.edu. If any of you have sort of learned about the Institute for Writing and Rhetoric, they use it for portfolios for all the freshmen, all the first years who come in are using that Journey site for their portfolios, but it's available to you for blogging, web presentations, and that kind of thing for your classroom as well. And then I don't want to, I don't like to continue to chat too much, but I'm going to quickly go through this, and then we're going to come back to some of these and talk about some of the use cases. So I'm going to quickly go through all these guys. Slack, collaboration tool. We've just developed a custom app to help you to provision a Slack workspace in your Canvas course for having brief chats and conversations, threaded conversations in your workspace, in your course. VoiceThread is a great tool for collaborative media critiquing, and for I might let Barbara talk more about that later on, but it's used a lot in language classes. It's used for if you want it to annotate media, video, that kind of thing. That a lot of people are experimenting with VoiceThread. Qualtrics is a survey tool that we have access to at Dartmouth, so it's a very powerful survey tool. Everyone has an account. Poll Everywhere is a tool that we have limited site licenses for, and if you contact our offices, it's for polling in your classroom, and we can, on a first come first served basis, we can help you use that. Hypothesis is an annotation software that's for group annotation, collaborative annotation. So people might refer to it as a social annotation tool for texts. Gradescope is, for those of you who have larger classes, it's a way to, well, it's a way to grade code more easily. I know Rebecca discussed that, doing a lot of code. So it's a way to grade code easily. It's a way to grade, if you have TAs and so multiple graders, it's a way to do that more easily. And there are just some really great tools for facilitating the grading process there. Did I miss one? I got them all, I think. All right, so let's pause that for a minute and let's talk about some of these things. First of all, let me, questions, brief overview, any questions that, I went at a blistering pace there, so I know. But does anyone have questions, thoughts, things that are intriguing to them that they might want to hear more about? Barbara, do you want to take
Yeah,
that
sure.
one?
I think Rebecca, you've just supplied the answer, right? Setting boundaries and being clear about when you will not be on Slack. Um, the thing that's actually really nice about Slack is that it very often leads to students exchanging with other students rather than with you. So they get a lot out of it, even if you are not present in Slack at all hours of the day, right? And it might save you from having to answer a lot of questions. So if it really takes off, then it takes off for the students, and that's really kind of the most wonderful thing to behold, right? Them working together and learning from each other.
So, remember what I said before, which is only grab those tools that you think are going to be helpful to you right away. And if you're going to add those new tools, add them judiciously and add them carefully. I can't emphasize that enough. Slack can be a good tool, and I would recommend figuring out workflows that work for you before you add it into your class. Experiment with it outside of your class and see. Barbara and Adam, maybe you might want to talk just quickly about some use cases where ways that faculty are using it in their classes that might sort of help people understand how it could be helpful.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things we talk a lot about with the various tools is which ones are asynchronous in that, it might be a student posting and then you get back to them at another point when you're in the course. And then some of these tools like Zoom, where it's like much more synchronous, real-time communication. Slack is kind of somewhere in between, and that can be good and bad. it is another thing to check, but one of the things that I've really liked it for is looking at courses that might have projects or activities like that that are happening in real time. I've seen some really cool examples with people doing like current events and tying current events into the classroom. And so Slack has a really slick kind of link previewing tool, so you could like preview news articles and things like that in it. I've seen it work really well in parallel to Zoom. So Zoom's chat, which you can see we've had a pretty lively back channel here. Zoom's chat like is one way to have real-time communication. The nice thing with Slack though is it kind of keeps that as a running log associated with the course. So if students are working in groups, you can kind of see into that. If students are posting during a class session, you could see into that. It really has kind of become similar to Canvas in some ways, a hub that's worked well for certain courses, depending on what you're trying to do.
Yeah, and some courses stay in Slack primarily more than in Canvas, but
I will say
Right.
it's not great for threaded discussion. So that's one thing I've been telling a lot of people about is like, if you're looking for a tool that would allow longer form writing and replying to it, I wouldn't recommend Slack necessarily for that. It could work, but the grading interfaces are better in Canvas for that.
so there have been a couple of ways, and Barbara and Adam, feel free to chime in if you have other ideas, but a couple of ways people have done it is people have used Google Drive. That's one way to set up a team drive to have things submitted there, and then perhaps have a document associated with them for comments and that kind of thing. That's one thing. Or a discussion board in Canvas where students post and then other students will look at, you can post media to a discussion board in Canvas and then people can comment on that. VoiceThread has been another way.
Yeah, sorry. I think for this kind of use case where they're actually submitting media files, the strength of VoiceThread is that you can comment on a media file at a specific point, right? So rather than listening to a music clip and then commenting on it in the aggregate, a student could insert a comment right where they want to make the comment in the clip, and the comment is tied to that moment. So that is very helpful if your submissions are video, language production, music, anything of that sort.
So the new Slack tool that was just developed, which should have shown up in your Canvas site, hopefully, allows for provisioning a Slack workspace that is tied to your course. And once you make that active and provision that, you say, yes, I want a Slack workspace in your course, then the students who are in your course have the opportunity to go in and join that workspace. And if they dropped your course, it would unenroll them from that Slack workspace associated with your course. So that's what that tool does, because it is a big pain to provision and to maintain a Slack workspace otherwise. So this tool is to help facilitate that. Okay. I guess that's the broad overview of that. And then in terms of G Suite, everyone at Dartmouth has a G Suite account. Full stop. Students have Google email. Faculty can have Google email if they want it. Adam, anything changed with that? Currently, I think the calendaring only works in Outlook, right? You can't, I mean, it doesn't work across tools very well.
Yeah, if you're in calendaring, you probably don't want to use it. Like if you're using shared, well, I mean, none of us are using shared rooms really right now on campus, but you know, if you're using any shared resources that way on campus or other people's availability, it doesn't pass that back and forth between the Google and Microsoft environments. So that's one space where you wouldn't necessarily want to do it. Thank you.
Other questions about anything that we've talked about so far?
I just want to add one comment to the Slack discussion to circle back to that. So yes, group projects are really valuable. It's used very much by computer science, for example, where students generally do coding projects together. So it's helpful for that. And I would recommend using new tools when they replace other tools and are the better tool. So if you already have 3 communication channels, say email and Canvas, don't add another one, right? If you do embrace Slack as a communication tool, then don't also use email, and probably also don't use, say, Canvas announcements, and drive your students to be using Slack instead. I think that kind of saves you from this tool overload, is trying to find what's the best breed of tool for my purpose, and then go all in on that rather than being all over the place. And then it does just add confusion and work.
And let me pull up Canvas, and I'll show you. We actually a little bit intentionally hid Slack because it's not the kind of thing that you want to just start playing around with, right? If you're gonna do it, you should be intentional about it, using it in your course. So if you don't understand it, you shouldn't just put one. You shouldn't just make one,
Okay.
I guess. So we kind of put it down in the menu. It's a menu item that if you want to make it active, it's down here in settings. So you go to settings and navigation, and then Slack is down here in the disabled menu items area. Once you put it up into the enabled menu area by dragging it up.
All right, I see it.
And then you save it, then it would give you that menu item, and then it will give you the opportunity to say, yes, I want to provision a Slack workspace for my course. Okay?
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Okay, so let's talk about this a little bit. Basically, as I said, we don't have enough time in an hour for me to teach you any of these tools, really. And I wanted to thanks, Stephen, for doing a plug for Teach Remote. I love it. So I did want to highlight that we have put a pretty large amount of time into that Teach Remote website as a hub for information on all of the things you need to teach remotely, not just the tech tool piece of it, but actually the pedagogy of it. So that Teach Remote website that you see in the chat has articles on teaching with each of these tools. In addition, it has a training page that I want to point out. So if you go in to the Teach Remotely website, which Adam, you want to highlight that for us, since Adam has been maintaining that website for us and designing it and has done a ton of work. You want to share your screen?
Yes, I could do that.
I'm doing a cold call on Adam here, which is not. It's not.
You give me the screen sharing magic power.
Oh yeah, I will. How do I do that? Come on. All participants. There we go.
Okay. Hopefully you all can see my screen now. So what I have up right now is just the homepage of the site. So if you go to teachremote.dartmouth.edu or sites.dartmouth.edu/teachremote, which you can see up here. Basically, we have it organized as like a one-page layout. So like each of these top links bring you to a specific point on the page. But if you scrolled and kept reading on the page, you would also get to those items. So we've talked about teaching guides. That's this first section. So there's some pedagogical advice and kind of some structured planning around, you know, if you want to think about that specific to your course. I highly recommend referring to those articles. We have a section on Zoom, a section on Canvas, including many of the tools that we've just talked about, a section on recording, a section on training, which I'll click into and show, and then file sharing, collaboration, reflections, and updates. So each of those are in there. I'm going to, oh, whoops, I went too far. But right above it, here's the training and support area. I also linked to that in the chat. So that's a link directly to that point on the page. Do you want to talk about specific things with this? We've essentially created specific event appointment types that you can schedule with our team, kind of specific to the tool that you need help with. So if you thought that you wanted to use something like VoiceThread after this, you could kind of learn more about VoiceThread, referring to the guides and getting specific help with that with the drop-in.
Yeah, I'm also going to give you, actually, why don't I just drop this in the chat now? This is, I cannot tell you how hot off the presses this this article is, but I did what we called the not so comprehensive annotated list of Dartmouth tools. Here, and it's in the chat, and it also links out to recorded trainings on some of these tools so that you can glance through and watch them at double speed, which is what your students are going to do, by the way, with your recorded lectures, so that you can see if this is a tool you might want to learn more about, and it'll give you some of that overview, and then you can set up consulting times with us using those links on Teach Remotely. And also, if you want to have additional time and a full consult with us, particularly after next week, our schedules are going to free up a lot more for one-on-one consults with people. Next week, it might be a little tricky to find times for one-on-one consults, just because we're fielding a lot of fires right now as people start up their classes. But we love to consult with people and to talk to them about better ways to do things and to help them think about assignments and to think about how to set up new ways of doing things in their class. So do try to grab times with those 15-minute time slots. It can at least get you started, and for longer consults, reach out to us via email, which I will put also in the chat. We're working on that. With Kaltura right now, because of the way it was set up to sort of protect copyright for those videos through the library, it's not easy for you yourself to download a video that you've uploaded there. But one of the administrators can download it for you for later use. And in fact, we are investigating media platforms where you'll be able to more easily do that now.
Thank you.
It'll probably be the end of fall term before that is in place, but it'll become easier, and we won't capture those things and never let them go, I promise. So the administrators can absolutely help. Adam, did you want to speak to that also? Oh, I thought you were raising your hand, sorry. Any other questions about tools, in terms of teaching remotely? I think I would just leave you with a couple of thoughts on that in terms of these tech tools. Emphasize collaboration and community as much as you can, and if the tools help with that and make sense to you to do that, please do try them out and embrace them. I would say make that one of the priorities of your tech use is establishing community through the use of these tools, because I think that's what people are lacking right now with the lack of in-person contact. They're lacking that community, and your classroom is becoming the hub of that community for them in a way that it never was before. So some of these tools are ideal for that. I would say Slack can be one of those tools, but again, I get it if it's too much and if it's something that you're not going to be able to use effectively because it's not understandable to you, or it's just one more thing that you can't embrace right now. totally don't do that. But VoiceThread can also be a nice way to collaborate around media files if that's what your course is emphasizing, right? With Cesar, I'd say VoiceThread is a nice way for them to collaborate. That might be a tool that's worth the effort to invest in. Even something as simple as a shared Google Doc where you have a shared writing project or hypothesis where you annotate a document together. Those can all sort of help in sort of strange and interesting ways to increase that sense of working together and collaboration and community. So I probably don't have enough time to go through both of those, but basically I can talk you through sort of, so VoiceThread, if you look at that document that I just posted in the chat, the last one there is a guide that has links to training for all of those things.
I couldn't open it.
You couldn't open it. Do I not have those? Is the sharing permission not there? Let me see. Oh, did you log in with you need to be in the Dartmouth College, your Dartmouth College Google account.
I'll look for
Yeah.
I can't look.
I can, I don't care if anybody, share it with the world. I don't care. But there are some links that you can only access if you're logged into Dartmouth. Let me go change the link. I'll just make it. Okay. Anyone with the link. Okay, I've updated it so that anyone with the link can view it now. So there are tutorials to that, but basically VoiceThread you can access from the VoiceThread site. And you would, for most of these tools, in order to get access to Dartmouth's license, you need to log in through single sign-on, which means you need to log in with your Dartmouth ID. And oftentimes you see that funny duo thing when that happens. And then Slack is so new. Bohan is asking about tutorials or video drop-in for Slack. That is so new right now that we have not spun that up. And that's something I'm going to be working on in the next week or so. I can, if you are interested, just send an email to learningdesign.tech if you're interested in learning more about Slack, and I will work to get something set up for the people who reach out about that. Okay, and then in terms of, so VoiceThread, you can go directly to the VoiceThread site, or you can create an assignment and then make it a VoiceThread assignment. Those are the two ways that it sort of works, but best to do a one-on-one and we can go through it. If you really are not very familiar with Canvas, I really would highly recommend signing up for a Canvas tutorial for those new to remote teaching. And that's an hour where we focus just on Canvas, and we would go through how to do these assignments and tools for that. So David asks about VPN.
Want me to talk about that?
Yes, please.
So there's a couple ways that you could share library resources. Some of them you'll notice within the library, like if you go into the catalog and grab a specific resource, you'll see the link sometimes embeds access to Dartmouth and sign in via the link that you get. So some of them you don't have to VPN. If your students do use the VPN, there are a couple knowledge base articles out there about this. And I think the library has a guide about it as well. That lets them access everything as if they were on campus, but you shouldn't need that necessarily. Most of the library links from the catalog will automatically give you a link that provisions access.
Other questions, thoughts, ideas, things I can help with? I know you guys are super busy, so it's not going to hurt my feelings if you need to hop off, but I'm also able to be here for additional questions. after, and I will, would everyone like me to send them the chat after in an email?
Sure,
Would that,
that'd be great.
okay. All right, I'll do that to the group. Other questions, concerns, thoughts?
Yeah, I'm just trying to
Yeah.
publish my Canvas page and can't. So, like, forget about Slack and all this other stuff. I just need to get my course online.
Okay.
We can follow up with that, Maddie. I could take a peek if you want.
Okay, thanks, Adam.